this is Tony from her Homestead Skills. First and foremost, I would like to thank everyone for the very large show of support. It actually was a little bit unexpected for me to see so many of you come out and support my right to speak my mind and talk on world subjects if I choose to. And yes, I understand that this is my channel and I can say what I like on it. We do have freedom of speech here in Canada as well. It's a little bit more circumscribed than what it is in the US. I wouldn't call it a total freedom of speech because we do have hate speech laws here. But on the whole, as long as you avoid hate speech, you're pretty much free to speak your mind, other than what perhaps YouTube will censor. So we try to stay away from those subjects as well. But anyway, and there's a few subjects I prefer not to touch on my own anyway. But other than that, yes, I think that subjects that we touch on here should be freely discussed by everyone. And from what I can tell, even sometimes the information that I get, and not often, but I do share information that comes from you, my subscribers. And who knows more what's going on than you in your own neighborhood. You don't really need me to tell you, but if you care to share it with the rest of us, sometimes I see things that are extremely worthwhile to share with everyone. Certainly my voice gets amplified a little bit more than one person's post, perhaps. But yeah, if there is something that is of value to discuss and share with everyone else, absolutely do it. I agree, we are a community. It is my channel, yes, but we are a community. And with it being my channel, I just see that I have the responsibility to keep it as friendly and as welcoming to a very diverse group of people. So I'll do my best to do that. And please view this as your community as well. Once again, I appreciate the show of support. And the more that you are willing to share with everyone else, the more that other people can prepare, because they know what may be coming down the pike. Sometimes one individual has got more of a heads up of what's going on in their neighborhood than another does, and we don't always all have all information. And yes, I have to get back in the kitchen, and I probably have to make some more chicken stock. We are emptying a few jars, and I should have enough to fill them up again. So as far as learning how to stretch a dollar, I'll admit that when it came to food, my mother never stretched a food dollar. And if that came from knowing food hunger, I don't know that she ever did. She never really showed the signs of it, but I know my father did. And maybe in respect to making sure that he never felt that again, she never scrimped on food. May have scrimped on clothing and shoes and all of those other things, but there was always food and decent quality food on our table. So never had to do with poverty type foods, you know. And even if it meant, and she did, she'd work a couple of jobs and sometimes even a third one. And they both worked, but my mother used to, at times, work these big weddings that people would have. So they'd work in the kitchen and they'd work serving. Her and my aunt, I think my aunt would get her that gig. And it would be on a weekend, on top of her regular work day or work week. But they would come home with all the food that didn't get out didn't leave the kitchen. And in those days, I don't think they were as precise about how many dishes were made, or didn't account for possibly, they made extra in case there was extra people coming, or, the head count wasn't correct. So there was always plenty of food. Now, whether it was just my mother and my aunt who took all the extras home, or all the ladies did, I have no idea, but I know my mother did. So that was one way we'd get all these luscious treats and desserts that, probably wouldn't last another day or two anyway and would be thrown out. So yeah, food was never scrimped on. Oh yes, and there was it wasn't just desserts, it was all kinds of food. And yeah, we'd eat for a week from her working that one Saturday. Now, she didn't do that often, but whenever she did, it was definitely a treat when she came home at the end of the day. So never knew hunger. I've never known hunger, as a matter of fact. There was a time where Mark and I didn't have food in the home, but we didn't let the kids know. And we got through that. Kids never noticed that there was an issue, they were just kids. But we got through it, and today I'm learning that yes, you can make meals that aren't costly. And as I said, I was never trained to do that. Although a good pasta dish is not an expensive meal. When I make meatballs and pasta, and even with a salad, that's about the most economical meal I can put together. And we have that on a consistent basis. A bag of pasta is not expensive. That's why Kraft Dinner took off so well. A box of Kraft Dinner was a very inexpensive meal. Now, that's not the kind of pasta we would eat normally, but pasta will fill you up, and it is not expensive. Down south, I understand you have a lot of cornmeal, and you make cornbread. And I've made my first batch of cornbread, and it was quite good. Sweet, tasty. But I understand that in my heritage, we made something with cornmeal, and it was traditionally considered the food of the poor people. And therefore, if that is the reason why it was never in our home, I don't know, but my mother wouldn't have it. So I've never heard of it until I was a little bit older. And it is a cornmeal porridge type food. It's called polenta, and it is made with cornmeal today. I think the original versions were made with some other grain. But it is either served as a soft porridge, maybe even with some tomato sauce and some sausages, or it is allowed to firm up and then cut into squares or bite-sized pieces and eaten on the side with some other foods. But that is something that was traditionally eaten a fair bit. It was the meal of the poor people. And that could be, as I say, why my mother would not have it in the house. I don't know. Whether she did that because she didn't like it, or food was, or to support her stance that food was one thing that she would never scrimp on and save on or cut back on. So my thought is to go out and source some cornmeal. Now, you can buy cornmeal everywhere, but apparently this particular dish uses a more coarse grade of cornmeal, and that's a little bit more difficult to find, so I'll have to search it out. Now, what amuses me to no end is that what my mother considered poverty food has become, and not so much recently, but a little while ago, it was considered a specialty dish for specialty restaurants, and no longer considered poverty food. Don't know why that was. Maybe it was just the uniqueness of the item to this marketplace. But anyway, I think the fad has somewhat died down, but it had become a fad food here. So I always found that rather amusing. Something that my mother would not have in the house had become a fad food here. But I've heard of that before. I mean, I've heard of Newfoundlanders. If you come from Newfoundland, when they were youngsters, people, well, not my generation, but the generation before me, was told that they were considered poor if they took lobster in their lunch to school. And I thought, oh my God, they preferred bologna over lobster. But because lobster was very common and available and pretty much for free, and it was considered the food for the poor people. I'll have to admit, lobster, I'll take lobster any day over processed bologna. But bologna was considered steak-like. So there you have it. It's no accounting for taste. So I thought I would try to make some polenta. If I can source it, and I'm sure I can probably go to Costco and source a small amount of coarse cornmeal. And I believe that even coarse cornmeal can be made into cornbread, should I decide I don't like the polenta. And I also believe that I could also make polenta with the finer cornmeal, but it's apparently better texture if it's made with the coarser grains. So I want to try a small batch of that first. There is nothing wrong with trying to figure out how to stretch your food dollar, especially today. And it may not be something that I need to do, but it may be something that I want to be prepared in case I need to do it. Maybe not today, maybe next year. Don't know. We know the world's going to hell in a handbasket, if you want to use that term. It is not going to get better. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. We know that. But the point is not to fear, but to prepare, to do what we can to alleviate some of the pain that you know is going to happen. We know that England is in trouble now, big time. But governments rise and fall, and it's a matter of how people, the population, accepts the new forms of government or the old forms of government or whatever it is that they're going to do to replace, and how they overcome their difficulties. I mean, countries have been in difficulties before. The dilemma, of course, is that so many of them are in trouble now, and each one, and it is a one world. It is no longer, you can no longer isolate yourself and say, I'm far enough away that what happens to you doesn't affect me. We do have a global society in many, many ways, definitely economically. So anything that affects one economically does affect everyone else too. We still have the war going on in Russia and Ukraine, and we also still have protests going on in the Middle East, and I don't think that they're subsiding in any way, shape, or form. So Europe's struggling, definitely struggling. Anyway, I do want to get out and about today. I don't really want to be in the kitchen. I have made a whole batch of meatballs. I can show you those. And yes, every time we run out of meatballs and we don't have any around for a week or two, I think we haven't had a pasta and meatball dish in probably a couple of weeks. And I decided the other day to go out and buy some. I make them with minced pork these days because it's actually tastier and less expensive than minced beef. And you can, I used to do a mixture of both, pork and beef mixed together to make meatballs. That's also very tasty. But yes, I did make another batch. It wasn't as large as the last one. Even minced pork has gone up in price. Let's see, by quarter. about 25% of what I paid for it the last time. So I didn't buy as large a batch, but that's okay. I just didn't feel like making it, for one thing. Now, yes, Mark does a lot of the cooking, but I do a lot of the prepping. So if I make the meatballs ahead of time and freeze them, he just has to pull them out of the freezer. And if I make the tomato sauce, he pulls out a jar of tomatoes, some frozen meatballs, cuts up an onion, puts some spices together, and there we have meal, and boils a pot of water to put the pasta on it. It's a quick meal. It does not take any half an hour. We have meal on the table, maybe 40 minutes. So, and anyway, yeah, I don't feel like being in the kitchen today. I think I will head off to Costco. I do want to buy a brick of Parmesan cheese, and that is one place, I mean, there it's not cheap there either. It's not cheap buying it by the brick, but it is fresh and tasty when you grind it as you use it. So, yeah, I want to get a brick of cheese, and I want to get some cream, and I may pick up a few other things, but I don't do all my shopping at Costco either. I am very selective. I do have a choice of a number of stores that I could shop at, so I'm pretty selective of what I buy at which store. And I don't, I mean, Costco, you can go there and you could spend hundreds of dollars with a blink of an eye. And I have done that, and that's fine. If I find things that I want or need or feel that there's value to getting it, I will do so, but my intent is really not to go and spend a lot of money today. And I may take a short trip through the thrift stores. I have been to the thrift stores a number of times and found absolutely nothing. And yes, Value Village does have a Seniors Day where you can get 30% off. But I think they've learned that those are busy days and don't necessarily put out their best stock on Tuesdays. So I don't seem to find much of anything. Maybe I've just gotten more selective, but mind you, the last lampshade I found was a gorgeous buy. You just have to be there at the right time, I guess. That's what it comes down to. And I do prefer to shop at Salvation Army. They're smaller. Once again, the selection is not as large, but I think they have a discount of 10% every day for seniors. So you don't have your 30% discount for Tuesdays, but you have 10% every day, and there is no tax. Yeah, the Salvation Army thrift stores are a true charity, so they don't charge tax. And in Ontario, that means you save another 13%. So with 13% and my 10% off for being a senior, that's 23% off every day, as opposed to 30% off on Tuesdays at Value Village. Now, Value Village is definitely a more successful environment, but it is a for-profit environment. And yes, they're larger and they have more selection of just about everything, but they're two different environments. And as I said, they both take in items from people who just want to give it away for free. So it just depends on who has what one day. And I'll have to admit that I bought my beautiful Royal Albert China at a Salvation Army store, a thrift store, and I did buy some beautiful Val d'Or Royal Albert China from a Value Village. So, although those buys are few and far between these days. Anyway, if I don't make a trip, I'll never find anything, so sometimes I just do a quick walkthrough, and if I find something, I will definitely show you. Anyway, rambling on and on again, I want to reiterate that I am thrilled with the support. I'm glad that people are enjoying my channel. You never really know for sure until people let you know. And once again, I appreciate all the support. It was a little unexpected, but very welcome. And I do view this as your community as much as my channel. And yes, it is my channel, but it is your community. And community building is what it's all about today. Anyway, this is Tony from Her Homestead Skills. Hope you enjoyed my little banter today, and hopefully will find me in the kitchen very soon. Bye for now.